All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Hey, everybody. It is the Mark Thompson Show. Here I am, Kim McAllister, with Hal Rudnick alongside, as Mark continues his journeys through Washington, D.C., where he's visiting his parents. So, hi, Hal Rudnick.
Happy Monday, Kim. Great to see you.
I'm delighted to have you. We've got Tony, too. I'm delighted to have Tony. Trust me, Tony. I've tried to do this by myself before, and when I see your face, I'm like, oh, Tony's here. Yes. All is good in the world. All is well.
We'll see. Oh, I can still mess this up. Don't worry. Give me a chance.
Tony was telling me about how much of a video game maven he is, and how his garage is
Those aren't books.
Those are all books, collectibles back there. All video games, and his garage is like a legit arcade. Like hashtag my teenage self goals. That rules.
I'm working on a whole set for like light guns now and everything.
Oh wow!
Like you wouldn't know. I'd say if you ever played a game called Time Crisis.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Time Crisis. Look at him in there.
Who needs Dave and Buster's? Just go over to Tony's house.
Exactly. If I set my 10-year-old free in Tony's house, it would be like he walked into the Willy Wonka movie, like that kind of joy.
Golden ticket.
So, Hal, I was thinking over the weekend, Mark always has all kinds of great Hollywood stories.
Ooh.
And, there he is. What is that, Tony? What are you holding up?
That's the foot pedal for Time Crisis.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That looks very professional.
Whoa.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Could that also double as like a guitar wah-wah?
It's like single clicks or no. But I have plenty of wah pedals as well because I have so many guitars as well. That's another conversation for another day.
The gadgetry is amazing. So I was thinking about asking you if you had any good Hollywood stories, because Mark's always got a couple good stories stashed away. And I thought, I don't know if you've met anyone or interviewed anyone that stands out, but I thought we could start with a Hal Rudnick story.
Nothing comes to mind, Kim, so moving on. No, I'm kidding. So I've gotten when you asked me that about Hollywood stories, I was thinking, from the classic era, like stories I've heard or read about. But then I've gotten the chance to interview and interact with a bunch of different celebrities, and some interviews have been fantastic, and it's like, wow, I'm really vibing, and this like we create a little bit of magic.
Sure.
And then some interviews make me want to just reevaluate my entire life.
Oh no.
There have been most celebrities, like they've been pretty solid, and the interviews have been fine, and you give them credit when they're in a junket situation. They're being interviewed throughout the day by 100 different outlets that they shuffle in and out of. It's usually done at a fancy hotel, like a 4-star hotel or whatever, like your Ritz-Carltons or various little boutique hotels in Hollywood. And let's just get right to it. My worst interview ever. Worst celebrity to interview. Tony, do you have a drum roll effect?
No.
I'll take that as a no.
It's like no. I see it.
Worst celebrity to interview was action star Jason Statham.
Oh, really?
He just didn't want to play. And I showed up wanting to. Here's my little secret of like how I do celebrity interviews oftentimes for these junkets, Kim. I want to go in and do the stupidest thing. I want to ask silly questions and make a fun bit, which will in turn make a clickable, fun piece of content, as opposed to just the same standard questions. So Jason Statham did a movie several years ago called The Mechanic. There he is. Strong chin, classic bald head, and a bad attitude when being interviewed. So he did a movie called The Mechanic, and I came in dressed in like a work shirt, wearing a fake mustache, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, guys? I'm a mechanic, and I'm glad you made a movie about mechanics. And it's not actually about mechanics. He plays a some guy who was like an ex-CIA guy who goes on to get revenge and murder people, which is the
Sure.
plot of so many of his movies, Liam Neeson's movies, you name it. And he's like, really? Is that what you're doing here?
Oh no.
He was like stone-faced, but I kept a good attitude and I kept going on with the bit. So it turned out fine. It turned out better than, okay, this is actually a tie for first. Tie for first as far as most difficult celebrities to interview was Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg was a tough cookie. So he did a movie with Kristen Stewart called American Ultra, which he plays someone who was like a sleeper agent from the CIA, and they did like these based on like the MK Ultra tests. The title of the film is the acid test that the CIA, I guess, did on different people in the 60s or something, 50s. There's a documentary about that called Wormwood.
Oh yeah.
On Netflix. So anyway, he and Kristen Stewart were in this movie, and they play stoner. He plays a stoner CIA agent. So I had all these lines of dialogue I brought with me. There it is. For them to read from famous stoner movies like Cheech and Chong, Dude, Where's My Car? And like they had agreed to it. Their publicists agreed to it. And I got in there. Jesse Eisenberg took the scripts that they were supposed to read back and forth with Kristen Stewart. He's like, oh, is this the thing you wanted us to do? Looks like fun. And then he handed it back to me.
Oh,
Didn't do it. And that left me up a creek. And I was dying inside because I'm like, oh, I had to, that's all I had planned because they had agreed to do it. So thanks, Jesse Eisenberg. So those were a couple of moments where I was kind of like just melting and wilting.
Yeah.
Thanks to celebrities. But there were plenty of great ones. One of my highlights, I got to sit across from Robert De Niro, Morgan Freeman, the stars of the movie Las Vegas, Kevin Kline and Michael Douglas. And that was just a real thrill. And I made Robert De Niro laugh, which
that was worth it. Yeah.
An achievement unlocked. So yeah, that's kind of a winding road of like some of the interviews I've got.
That's awesome. There. I think my worst had to be Wesley Snipes.
Ooh, what happened?
I was sent to a bar. So it wasn't like a junket where they expect to be interviewed. I was sent to a bar because they knew he would be there. And so I walk in and there's all these like gorgeous women in scantily clad black dresses and heels. And it's a very like swanky affair. Okay. And I'm not necessarily dressed for the occasion. But I walk in, I've got my microphone and whatever. And I just want to ask him a couple of questions. And he looks at me and nothing. His mouth didn't even open. Like there was no response. It was the rudest thing. Not like, hey, I'm not really up for interviews right now, or hey, I'm trying to let my hair down. And there was no, like, he said nothing. Nothing.
Wow.
I know. It was real. It was like, whoa, okay, I guess you're not really in the mood to be interviewed. So bye.
That's rough. That's rough.
Yeah.
And Kim, like there's an old adage in Hollywood, the making the movie, being on set, that's a good time. That is the fun. The work is the promotion, right, and having to promote the films. So I guess some people are just not in the mood.
Not in the mood at all. No. Well, we have a good show coming up here on the Mark Thompson Show. We've got Courtney, who will be here with True Crime Corner. Courtney is Mark's better half. He calls her that, so that's okay. She comes and she's really, really an aficionado of all things true crime. So she picks a story, and every Monday she comes and we gather around the campfire and she'll tell us a really good story. Also, Mark left me a recorded interview with our logistics expert, Jonathan Rosenthan. I don't know if you remember or if you saw the show that he came on talking about drones and really broke news on the show about the ability of drones that were made in China that are used all over the United States for surveillance, for all kinds of things, to take the information they've learned here and send it right back to China.
Oh
Huge
boy.
security risk. Yeah. So he talked about that last time he was here, and so we'll have him in a recorded piece with Mark later on in the show. There was
Very
a
nice.
story over the weekend, and I don't know if you happened to see this one, about Governor Ron DeSantis meeting up with Donald Trump. They
Aha.
did it on Sunday in Miami. And remember, these two really went at it in the primaries, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Trump was offensive to him. Yeah, it was not a pretty situation. But
Yeah,
Al,
and I remember a lot of people were assuming that DeSantis would kind of take the mantle of autocratic fascism and nationalism from
mhm,
Trump and be the prospective nominee, but he kind of fell apart because he doesn't know how to smile like a human being.
yeah, it's a little
He's like,
off-putting.
Hello, now I am acting like a person, right?
Yes, it's very, very off-putting. But even so, it's kind of embarrassing to have a guy that called you names, that kind of beat you up in the press, and now here you are meeting with him in Miami. The whole reason
Mm-hmm.
wasn't because, they want him for vice president or whatever, any other thing. It was all about money. Sorry, I forgot to
Mm.
speak out there for a second. It was all about money. And apparently, and this I think is really important, that Trump needs DeSantis because DeSantis had a really good fundraising machine going.
Mm.
And Trump is trailing Biden when it comes to raising money for this upcoming election. So
Gotcha.
now he has to turn to DeSantis to say, all right, all the people that you had tapped for to be your donors, to be your fundraisers, I need you to go out and try to fundraise for me. So now DeSantis is in this position, like, do you help the guy that basically name called you, pummeled you, was
I
such a
mean,
total jerk to you?
isn't that the Trump playbook, though,
Yeah, yeah.
to just be derisive and horrible to the people around him until he
Hmm.
needs them, or they come
Yeah,
back kowtowing? Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, like
yeah,
one after another. Like Trump will beat like a pinata and call all sorts of,
yeah.
horrible sophomoric juvenile names, and then they have all sold their soul to him, and the Republican Party is not what it was, and not that that was great either. But there you go.
And DeSantis is playing ball. As a matter of fact, on Sunday, he made a video that he posted on X saying, "It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance." So he posted this Sunday afternoon on X. Uh, and he kind of, maybe I've never heard this word before and it's a real word, or maybe he created this word, but he said they watched his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Lawfare as opposed to warfare,
Oh, okay. So
right?
yeah,
Attacking him with the law. Right.
weaponizing the justice system.
Have you
You
heard
know,
that word before? Lawfare? I thought,
I I
oh, that's a new one.
I haven't. And, when they talk about, okay, this new word lawfare or
Hmm.
the deep state going
Right.
after Trump, those things wouldn't be in play if Trump didn't break so many laws carelessly and relentlessly. Uh, that's part of the equation. Maybe
Yeah.
don't break so many laws all the time.
Crazy. And then I was looking at this CNN poll that came out yesterday. And this is the wildest thing in this poll. They say, I guess we forget easily what happened during the whole Trump presidency. And so there's a poll. They say, all right, 61% of people asked about President Biden's presidency say it's had been a failure, but 39% say it's been a success. But that is not the way they viewed former President Trump's. They said 44% view Trump's presidency as a success. And I'm thinking, were you not there?
Yeah, I think it comes down to something. I think this quote is attributed to Bill Clinton. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only reason I could think that they would say that is It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and even though, like we talked a little bit about this last week, the economy it's a series of contradictions. It's like it's great and by some metrics, and
Mhm.
but prices are higher,
Yeah.
and you have these company. I mean, I think it's a perfect storm of like COVID supply chain stuff, never catching back
Mhm.
up to that. Companies just wanting to continue to make record profits year after year, and anything else is untenable. And so it's that combination of things that they're able to look past Trump making the country meaner
Yeah.
and making the country more tense and make so many human rights violations, making at-risk people feel even more at risk. And but they financially, maybe they were doing slightly better. So
So
there you
I
go.
got I got the numbers wrong. That's what happens when I try to do it from memory. It was
Hmm.
44% see it as a failure. 55% see the Trump presidency as a success. So it's even
What?
worse than I had said. And then as far as the current stance in the race, Trump's support in the poll among registered voters 49% in a head-to-head matchup against President Biden. President Biden stands at 43%. So yeah.
Ooh, I thought they were in a dead heat,
I
but
thought so too.
I thought it was getting closer.
Yeah, 49 to
Oh.
43. So, and
Teacher Lori,
it's
thank you for the real-time fact check. It was James Carville. James Carville, who I met in Vegas. He was walking through a casino, and I grabbed a picture with him. Uh,
he's funny.
yeah,
I just like to listen to him speak.
the Louisiana pundit. Hmm.
We have this, and we talked about this a little bit last week, all the protests going on at college campuses around the country,
Yep.
the closure of some campuses, I think it's Columbia that's going hybrid until the end of the semester.
Yeah, USC canceling their commencement, which is
Graduation,
usually
right.
just like a giant 60,000 person affair.
But at UCLA over the weekend, things got pretty violent. There are two different groups of protesters, one pro-Palestinian, I guess the other pro-Israeli, and they clashed. There's lines. They're supposed to stay in their designated zones.
Hmm.
They did not. Something happened, and all of a sudden there was some type of clash there. And so I guess the scare, yeah, there it is. Their video of it. Yeah, you can see they're being pushed back, and then it's scary. And I guess as we watched what happened there, and people clashing, and there's pushing and shoving, and yeah, it's when things start to get violent, then you got to move in and start arresting people. And now these college students are facing charges in some cases and have broken the rules, maybe have gotten violent on campus, and will be told that they need to leave the university and won't be able to finish their studies. And there's a lot of people protesting that. Like, no, we should be able to protest, say what we want without facing repercussions from our campuses, even though they're breaking rules of these campuses.
Yeah, just down that rabbit hole. It's just one waking nightmare after another.
Mm.
Uh, it's difficult because there's a proud tradition of students, young people, like leading the charge in protests. You go back to Vietnam and throughout, and it's a horrible human rights situation in Gaza. But then again, Hamas is a legitimate state-funded terrorist group. I mean, people think about, where do they come from? Follow the money to Iran. Look at the state-sponsored actors behind this. So it's a lose-lose for all of us, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just horrible. I wish I had anything else to really shine a light on this situation, but it's mind-numbingly awful.
Well, the people who can actually do something about it seem to be trying to move in that direction, because today, Antony Blinken is trying to negotiate a ceasefire. He calls it an extraordinarily generous ceasefire proposal that's been presented to Hamas. So
Hmm.
we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such a lose-lose. I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. It's like, oh, we wouldn't need a ceasefire if Hamas didn't, enact October 7th. But then,
Right.
like Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, he's the biggest hawkish right-wing guy that Israel could have possibly brought in, and like, there's many issues with him. Oh boy,
It's a
Yeah.
mess. I'll lighten it up now because we have this story. There's this billionaire from Australia who's building a new ship. It's huge. It's a massive ship. And he's going to call it the Titanic II. Now, maybe that has a little bad juju. I don't know if that's the best name. It's the Titanic. Are you going to climb aboard the Titanic II for a lovely sail? No.
yeah,
He's-
not an auspicious name. The first one didn't end well.
His name is Clive Palmer. He's the chairman of the Blue Star Line Company. He says the Titanic II's maiden voyage is scheduled for June of 2027. He made his fortune through mining, and he's been trying to rebuild this historic ship for more than a decade. So he's doing it. He said, "We're pleased to announce, after unforeseen global delays, we have re-engaged with partners to bring the dream of Titanic II to life. Let the journey begin."
Oh my God. Yeah. Excuse me while I book a ticket on Hindenburg Airlines.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't bode well to call it the Titanic II, just because people are suspicious about these things, or superstitious, I should say, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if the Titanic II, imagine if something actually happens to it. It's like, is there something going on?
The only way I could find myself agreeing to set sail and be a part of this ship is if it has nothing to do with the actual ship, and they're like, no, this ship is an homage to the breathtaking James Cameron film and nothing else. You've got the Jack, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, the Jack dance floor.
Right.
Who's it? Ruby? No, what was the name of the female character? Rose.
Rose.
Yeah, the Rose water slide on the top deck.
Oh God.
And join us in the heart of the ocean dining room, where you might be able to sit at the captain's table.
So funny. Now, maybe if it was like that, but still probably not. I don't know.
No. Oh, and then there'd be like a romantic lounge that's called the Floating Door. You know the Floating Door, right,
Of course.
Kim? Yes.
Everybody has to try to fit on there. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's, what could be named after the iceberg?
They say it was shaped like an elephant.
Ooh,
iceberg.
okay. So maybe like a kid's playground, like with like
Right.
animal themed, like little jungle gym type stuff.
Sure, even an iceberg replica. Why not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, an ice sculpture in the dining room of
Love
the
it.
iceberg.
Yeah. I
It's all
think they
come
should hire
together.
us.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, we could be like, you and I should, like, I think we have a career working for Carnival Cruise Lines or something.
Perfect.
Was there room also on the door, Kim? It was Kate Winslet just a
door hog?
a selfish turd there, a
I
door hog.
Well, if she hadn't been, then the movie would have ended completely differently. And
True.
he had to go,
True.
right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
gotta kick him to the water.
he had to. I mean, that was the plot. So yeah, she had to hog that door.
Yeah.
Now they've done studies showing that, there was room. If they had
was
laid in a certain way,
room.
that it would have worked out. But
There you go. And they would have floated to safety, and Jack would have been there in the flashbacks.
it was what it was.
Flash
Yeah.
forwards, yeah.
I think we have time for just a touch of Law and Disorder, Tony.
Ooh.
So let's make it happen, because I have this story I wanted to share with you.
In the criminal justice system, the people
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care.
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
All right, first story up on Law and Disorder. A lawyer has received 10 years in federal prison for a hitman hiring attempt to murder the mother of his children.
No.
Now, here's the thing. To me, it shouldn't matter whether he was successful or not. it doesn't matter that the hitman he tried to hire was fake. It doesn't even matter if the hitman he tried to hire just was not a good hitman and did a poor job. What matters is he tried to hire somebody to kill the mother of his children. So, I mean, do you think you should get more in prison if you're successful in murdering someone than if you aren't?
By the letter of the law, yes,
I
because
know,
the murder has not been committed, but the guy had the intent, and he checked the box on his part of the job, whether the murder transpired or not. He went to hire a killer. He hired the killer. So his part in this is the same as if there was bloodshed or murder went down. So I see your point, Kim, but thank goodness you are not judge, jury, and executioner, Kim. Because the murder didn't happen, so by the letter of the law. But I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
This guy, he's 49. His name is Alan Gesson. He's an attorney out of
I'm
Massachusetts.
guessing he wasn't in a happy marriage.
Guessing he wasn't. He apparently came into contact with an undercover FBI agent when he was being investigated for money laundering in the summer of 2022. So he has other issues.
Yeah.
So he meets with the undercover agent twice, and during these meetings volunteers information about his years-long dispute with his former partner, which had resulted in contentious child custody proceedings. Using the connections he thought an undercover agent posing as a criminal might have, apparently, his objectives transformed from bribing an immigration official to deport his former partner to hiring someone to murder her.
Oh, that escalated quickly.
Initially, he negotiated $100,000 for the bribery and deportation scheme, but then he decided he wanted the woman murdered and offered $50,000 to have it carried out.
Let me see the happy family again.
$50,000. Oh, yeah. Those little babies.
Yeah.
So he wanted to kill her because he said it was cheaper to get rid of her. And it was a more permanent solution. He wanted full custody of those kids. Yeah. He previously apparently tried to hire people to kill her, but they jacked up the price to $210,000. So $50,000 was a bargain. It should have been a red flag for him. $50,000? No.
I mean, it sounds like inflation is affecting the cost of hiring killers.
First of all, he was cheap, too cheap to hire a good hitman. Second of all, he failed altogether. Yeah, he gets 10 years in federal prison Friday in San Francisco. So yeah, he's
put him on ice for 10 years to think about it, pal.
Somehow, I don't think he feels bad. I'm just gonna go on a
he probably feels bad that he got caught, but he's he's probably glad that he's only getting 10 years. That's for sure. I want to shout out Vilma Devlin. She says, "Who's the co-host?" My name's Hal Rudnick.
Hal.
Glad to be here. Big shoes to fill on the Mark Thompson show, but enjoying my time.
Thank you. I should probably introduce you over and over and over again.
No, not at all. Kim, great.
This happened recently in the Bay Area, and now I see a story that it's happened in the Los Angeles area as well. They have these sideshows where they take over streets and they do the donuts, right, with the cars in the middle of the street, and people stand around, and it's very dangerous.
Sure. And they pop, motorbikes come in, popping wheelies and stuff. Yeah.
So now apparently that's not enough of a show. So in the Bay Area and now here in Southern California, they've decided they need a little oomph. So they've thrown fireworks into the mix. And the Los Angeles Police Department says this illegal street takeover featured plenty of fireworks. Look at that. Wild. I guess it's not enough to do donuts now. Now you have to have something else.
Oh, look, the lasers,
fireworks. Yeah.
Dangerous, potentially fatal, but kind of cool. Doesn't need to be 4th of July. Doesn't need to be 4th of July for fireworks. I don't know if you remember the. I don't know if it was just during the pandemic. I'm not sure if it was just a Los Angeles phenomenon, but people were shooting off fireworks often, up to and after the 4th of July. Like it was just a big year or a big summer for fireworks. and people were saying it was like a psyop, like a psychological operation to,
Oh,
I don't know, rile people up or get people more unhinged during the pandemic. Yeah, but I say any night is better with fireworks.
now there'd be a lot of people that disagree with you. There'd be a lot of people that say, listen, it's a residential area. There's people trying to sleep. There's pets that are being freaked out,
Sure.
right? And so, come on.
Veterans with PTSD who are being freaked out.
Yeah, all these things. So I don't know. And it's like it's escalating. That once it was, we're just going to do fancy car tricks, right?
Yeah.
And now we need laser lights and fireworks. What's next? I don't know.
You know, it's just some, folks, people get bored. They take it into their own hands and they want to turn it into a street party, and
Come on
it is
now.
dangerous. It is dangerous.
Oh.
I hope everyone does safe donuts and figure eights. I'd say, go to a supermarket. I say do it in a supermarket parking lot
Yeah.
after hours. But it does speak to the mischievous child in me who gets excited when they drive by a fireworks stand. Just very quick anecdote. When I was 17 years old, I was visiting my sister here in California. She lived out here before I came out. And we went down to Mexico and I bought a bag of M80s. M80s are like half a stick of dynamite or something. And I was excited to take them back to New Jersey and blow up my G.I. Joe vehicles.
And did
that I
you
had
get
when I was
across
a
the
kid.
border with those things? Was that okay?
Got across the border with them, took
Wow.
them back. And my sister said, I don't want you taking these on the plane. This was pre 9/11, by the way. I don't want you taking these on the plane. I will mail them to you. And I flew back to Jersey. My sister stuck them in a bucket of water and then threw them away.
Oh, I love your
And
sister.
I was like,
That's the
no,
best.
Kim, no.
Yes.
I mean,
You could,
maybe
for all you know, you could be without several fingers right now had you
This
managed to
is
get
true.
those back to New Jersey.
this is true. I forget who was there was a New York Giants football player who blew off 3 of his fingers.
I'm serious. You don't
Yeah.
give little kids M80s and say go play. No, she got
I
it
was
right.
17 years old.
Oh.
I just wanted an M80 and a BB gun.
All right, I have one more story in Law and Disorder before we get to Courtney, who I see is waiting in the wings. But this is a story also out of Los Angeles. This woman from San Gabriel Valley has pleaded guilty to defrauding more than $150 million from the U.S. Postal Service. That's quite a lot of money, you ask. How did she do it? Li Juan Angela Chen, is 51, of Walnut, carried out the scheme by using counterfeit postage to ship tens of millions of packages. I mean, tens of millions of packages. I don't know, she must have had a team of people doing this. She owned and operated a package shipping business in the City of Industry, which provided shipping services for China-based logistic businesses.
Oh.
So to save money, she creates fake postage stamps to ship packages by printing duplicate and counterfeit net stamps, which are stamps you can purchase online from third-party vendors and printed onto adhesive paper. So she does this with a partner who flees the country, but she continues. She remains in the United States to oversee the warehouses that they were both using to ship the packages. She ships more than 34 million packages with counterfeit postage.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of packages.
A great scheme until you get caught, until
That's
you
right.
get busted, kiddo, by the postmaster general who comes down to her office. Postman here, you're in trouble.
150 mil, and now as part of the plea agreement, she has to forfeit funds that they seized from her bank accounts, her insurance policies, and real estate in several cities, including Walnut, Chino Hills, South El Monte, Diamond Bar, and West Covina. All the property that she had amassed with her gazillions that she was saving now becomes the property of the U.S. government. So,
Kim, I just love hearing you take me on this verbal tour of Southern California.
There you go.
Walnut, City of Industry. By the way, City of Industry. I always thought that was a weird name for a city. I'm probably about a 45-minute drive from
they
there.
make a lot of stuff there. They're very busy. Very
Yes.
industrious in the city of industry.
I just think about when people were naming some of the towns here in Southern California, City
Sure.
of Industry, and then there's a town called Commerce. Yes. Here are a couple more ideas for towns in Southern California based on this idea. Capitalism Hills.
That's beautiful.
Inflation Corners. And others.
That's so
Moneyburg.
good.
Moneyburg.
Moneyburg would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Right
know.
between Commerce and City of Industry.
I've often thought that about City of Industry. Another one that gets me is in here in the Bay Area, we have a Fashion Island. I don't think it's a city, but it's an exit on the freeway. And I always thought, ooh, Fashion Island. I'm like, are there models strutting around? And you can go buy the most exquisite garments and jewels. This
Listen,
is Fashion Island.
I'd rather
That's
go to
not
Fashion Island than Epstein Island.
It's not what it is. Yeah, you and me both. All right, that is Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Well, Mark is rubbing off on me over here because perhaps that was a classic Mark Thompson time waster. I don't know. But I've kept Courtney waiting long enough because Courtney is going to join us with an interesting story that I think has become the subject of a Netflix series or a TV series. So we'll talk to her. This is True Crime Corner.
Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
Well, Mark Thompson's not here today. Kim McAllister here with Hal Rudnick. And Courtney, hi.
Hi. How are
Thanks.
you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Great to meet
Thanks.
you, Courtney.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Hal. Yeah, this is so cool. I'm so excited I get to meet you. And thank you for having me, Kim.
Absolutely. I'm glad you could make it. So you have a story for us that is this the new Baby Reindeer series?
Well, I was going to touch on Baby Reindeer.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's funny. Mark is gone, so the house is a lot quieter. A lot of peace here in the home. And so I've been watching Baby Reindeer, and I was gonna cover that story, and then I decided to cover the sort of ongoing story about the Rainy Street serial killer in Austin.
Okay.
There was a body that was discovered, I think, this last month in April. And so this story sort of continues to come up in the media because they're unsure if this is a serial killer or if these deaths are unrelated. But Baby Reindeer, I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's such an interesting series. And if you haven't seen it, it's the number one show. It's been the number one show on Netflix for like the last 3 weeks. And it covers an experience by a comedian, Richard Gadd, and a woman who was stalking him. But it's so layered in its analysis of the stalking that was happening. Also, Richard Gadd was a victim of sexual assault. But it's truly a series, I think, that is having people really sort of consider trauma, and much of his trauma from the sexual assaults were playing a role in what happened with the subsequent stalking. And those incidents are separate, but it's a really interesting series right now. So if you haven't seen it, and you have interest, I recommend it.
Yeah, I've watched about half of it now, and I have to go back in and finish it. But yeah, it's interesting for among the reasons you've mentioned. Also, that it's a little bit of a role reversal because a lot of times we think of an aggressive spurned male partner or a man doing the stalking, and here it's a woman doing the stalking, and it really does a good job of getting into this person's mind and mental illness and exploring what makes this this stalker tick.
Yes, it's so true. And why at first Richard was drawn toward the attention, not
Mhm.
justifying it, but just how maybe some lines were blurred initially, only because of where he was after the sexual assaults and where he was in his career. And those are tied, because the sexual assaults that happened were tied to some stuff that was happening in his pursuit of comedy writing and being a comedian. And so then this incident where he gives this woman a cup of tea, you'll hear quite a bit in not only in the story, but in interviews subsequent to the launch of this miniseries, or the debut of this miniseries, and him talking about this experience. And so giving this cup of tea to this woman whose name is Martha in the miniseries, in the play, but that is not her real name. From there, she begins to stalk him. But he is initially he sees the attention as something that he hasn't yet had in his career. And I think he's a little bit drawn toward that, but obviously it goes into something that becomes very devastating for him and his family. I think it's also really interesting how they tell the story with the typing of the font on the phone. And she has some sort of Android, but she always types sent with iPhone. And it's funny, just sort of talks, it plays into this sort of delusion of this woman, and she starts to misspell, and her grammar is terrible. But the typing of it and the showing of that, to me, was a really interesting way to kind of tell the story. But
is it at all like Misery? Because the picture makes me think of that Kathy Bates movie.
yeah, I mean, fortunately, nobody dies.
Okay.
But yeah, I think she's there's a lot of cyber stalking. She's going to his shows. She's going to the bar that he works at. What's interesting is he never gives her his phone number, right, Hal? So like she doesn't have his phone number until something happens. And then I think it's when he reports it to the police or something, she gets his phone number. But up until then, it was a lot of like emails and cyber stalking. And then she found his parents, and then she was stalking his parents. And then after she got his phone, it was a lot of texting and phone calls. And you'll see in the miniseries, the limited series, he takes all of her voicemails and he categorizes them, and he goes back and listens to them. And it's from that he writes this limited series. But he would often go back and listen to a lot of the messages that she sent him. And she's coming out now saying that this is embellished. And he does, I believe, say that parts of this are maybe fictionalized, but she's come back and said that this is embellished and this is not the case. But she has not been identified. She spoke with the Daily Mail, which, as Mark would attest to, is my favorite. much to his horror. And but it's called Baby Reindeer because she had a toy as a child. So at the very last episode of this limited run series, I keep calling it something different. I'd be a terrible marketer for Netflix. But at the end of this series, I think it's 6 or 8 episodes, she talks about her parents arguing all the time and being violent and this really traumatized childhood that she endured. And in that, source of comfort was this plush toy that she had that was a baby reindeer. And this baby reindeer was adorable and meant so much to her, and it represented safety to her. And she felt that Richard Gadd looked like the baby reindeer. And so that is why she called him Baby Reindeer.
Okay.
Now, I went into the series because I had heard everybody was watching it and I couldn't sleep at 4 a.m. But I did not know that Richard Gadd was, in fact, the person that was being stalked, because he wrote, directed this series and what was I think it was an off-Broadway show, a one-man show. But I didn't know that. So then I found that out a little bit later, and it was really heavy to know that he was re-experiencing everything that happened to him through.
I didn't realize that either, Courtney. And
Oh, really?
until that's fascinating, and it adds this extra wrinkle. So you're almost watching him relive his trauma.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wild. That's like the show within the show. That's really cool.
I know.
I would think every time you re-listen to those messages, it's like reliving the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I mean, the good news is Mark has never left me a voicemail. Our entire relationship was going on a decade. So, no, but it's true. And he really did. And when I say categorize, I mean, there was tens of thousands of messages that he went through and categorized all of them and cut them up. And they became part of his telling the story. And then this story really took off on this show, this off-Broadway show, this one-man show. And then subsequently they've made the Netflix series. So yeah, but if you haven't seen it, so I saw it a couple of weeks ago. It was number 3, and now it's been number 1 for the past couple of weeks. It really is everywhere. And he is charming and funny. And it's also an exploration of sexuality. So he grew up as a straight man, but after the sexual assaults, he started to kind of explore what his sexuality was and how he would identify. And in a recent interview that I was listening to, he said sort of all of the kind of sexual identifications, he felt most closely to queer. So I think he's had straight and gay relationships, but yeah, it's a really interesting series if you haven't seen it. So,
but you also wanted to talk about some type of serial killer, right? And the good news is there's never a shortage of those, Courtney.
I mean, it's not true crime unless there's been a murder.
Right.
Mark wants me to broaden the scope of what we talk about.
No.
Murder's near and dear to my heart. No, it's funny because Mark's gone, so I don't really sleep well, and I was like, I don't know if I want to be in the weeds of stalking and murders while he's gone, and I have only 4 cats to save my life. But there is a story that's really fascinating to me, and something that's come up in this past month because another body was found at Lady Bird Lake. So I thought we would touch on it really quickly. So some people believe there is a serial killer in Austin, Texas. And some people are calling it the Austin Ripper. Some people are calling it the Rainy Street Ripper. But there have been a total of, as I can count, 19 bodies since 2008.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All pulled from the lake?
All pulled from the lake, all highly intoxicated, most of them being, all of the ones identified being men between the ages of 20 and 40. Now, there are some unidentified bodies that are not included in that total, and some of them are women. Yeah. There is one person in that total of 19 that was found alive. And he's quite a character. He went on a podcast and talked about what happened to him, but he was in town to see Tom Segura. So you sort of already know that he's there to party. Right?
Yeah, looking for a good time.
He's not there sightseeing.
Yeah, throw back a few drinks and go to the Comedy Mothership in Austin.
Yeah, exactly. But just to go into it, so there's 19 bodies. Now, it's interesting because some people are reporting back to 2018 when the first body was found. And some media outlets are reporting closer to like 2022 to 2024. So it was very difficult for me to find one source that was like reporting everything. But this is that was a list of like all of the victims from 2008 to 2024, 2023. And all of them are found under similar circumstances. They're all found in and around the lake. They all were intoxicated, and many of them had bruising, broken bones, severe trauma to their body. And so, again, too, they're all men between the ages of 20 and 40 for the most part. So there's a similar profile of each of the victims. Most of them are seen on Rainey Street. So Rainey Street is like a very popular street in Austin. A lot of food trucks. And I bring that up because several of them were seen at food trucks before their bodies were found at the lake. And so they're out partying, they're out having drinks, they're out at bars, they're at the food trucks. They're last seen there, and then they are found deceased in the lake.
So something's happening by the food trucks.
Oh, yeah. Or is the serial killer driving a food truck?
There you go. I mean, now we cracked the case. But there were 2 victims. Yeah. So if you're watching, here's a visual of like Rainey Street, where several of the victims were last seen and then discovered in Lady Bird Lake. Now, Lady Bird Lake was created in 1960 as like a cooling pond for a plant and for a commercial plant. And then Lady Bird Johnson, who was the wife of Lyndon Johnson, she kind of took over and started to take care of the surrounding areas of the lake. Because at the time, in the 60s, it actually wasn't being well taken care of. So the lake was originally, I think it's called Town Lake. And then in 2007, after the death of Lady Bird, they changed it to Lady Bird Lake. Now, you cannot swim in Lady Bird Lake and you cannot operate motorized watercraft. And that is because there have been deaths going back as early as like the 60s and 70s where children were drowning, and there were issues with that, with motorized watercraft. So you can't swim and you can't go in the lake if any of those types of like, quote, vehicles, if you will. There are 2 victims that survived attacks that have had interviews. The first is Christian Pugh, who's the gentleman that I mentioned, who went to go see Tom Segura. And then he was found, but it took a month for him to come out of this sort of comatose state that he was in. He was severely beaten. He doesn't remember anything. And he is on an interview of the Honeydew podcast where the host calls Tom Segura and they talk about the story. And then I was listening to another show, and they had an interview with a man who was drugged at a bar on Rainey Street. And it was unlike any experience he had ever had, to the point where he was taken to urgent care. He couldn't move. He could barely breathe.
Wow.
So it was definitely something that came from a substance that was put in one of his drinks. Now, some people are saying it's GHB. Some people are saying it's other substances. But the majority of the bodies that are found are alcohol intoxication. Mm-hmm. So, but this is definitely something to watch. I mean, even as of this month, there was a body pulled from the lake. So this is a visual, if you're watching, of the lake and the deaths between 2022 and 2024 this year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's a lot of bodies. You would think that after that many bodies pulled from the lake, there would be cameras set up all over the place. Right?
You would think. Yeah. And I pulled this, if you're watching, because it's really interesting. Like, a lot of these are just accidental drowning, but there's just so many of them, and there's such similar profiles of victims and such similar circumstances in which they went missing. And
a
then
little too much coincidence.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
accidental drowning, sure.
I know, right? Yeah.
Courtney, by the way, I know where you're coming from when it comes to like immersing yourself in so much true crime that you creep yourself out a little bit, and then you're at home with only your cats to protect you. Because my wife works in a lot of true crime, like she produces some stuff, and she'll be like poring over a case, and then I'll just walk into the bedroom or something, and she'll turn around and be like, "Who's there? What's going on? What's that behind your back?" And I'm like, "It's me, your husband, coming to bed." Like, that has literally happened.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I mean,
you get true crime on the brain.
yeah, I joke that I do my rounds at night. Like I'm the security guard of the home. So I go around and check every single door is locked. And I mean, while Mark's gone, I have, all this stuff to protect myself, but I'm really hoping the cats show up for me in case something happens.
Come on, cats, spring into action.
But it's true. Like I can't, it's interesting. Yeah. For the most part, I'm okay listening, watching it. But yeah, when I'm in a situation where I might feel a little bit more vulnerable, like I can't deep dive into it. But this Austin Ripper, Rainy Street Ripper is something that I've continually read and heard about. And so I thought we would talk about it today.
Yeah, that's wild. And just that there've been so much, and then the victims, I guess, if you were drugged, your short-term memory from right before the incident is going to be clouded, and so that makes sense that they wouldn't be. But you would hope they could get police sketches and just narrow it down especially because they're all in this area. They have they have victims that survived. Yeah, but it's crazy. Yeah. Someone put in the comments that the FBI estimates there's 100 active serial killers in the United States right now. Wild.
That's wild. Yeah, it's interesting. There's another theory too about, then you start getting into like conspiracy theories, but I will.
Oh, that's Hal's favorite.
Yeah, exactly. As I put my tinfoil hat on, but there are some people that are saying that there are smiley faces found in and around some of where these victims' bodies are.
Creepy.
Yeah, we're getting into like Joker, like Riddler stuff right there. That's crazy.
There's a smiley face killer from, I believe, 1997, where young men were found drowned. And so who knows if this is coincidence or not. I couldn't find a source that had the exact number of bodies in Texas that were recovered near smiley faces, but certainly this seems to be happening. One show I was listening to attributed the smiley faces to pop culture and just that they're everywhere. And that is in and of the case of why they would be close to places where the bodies were recovered. But it is a fascinating case. And I do hope for the sake of the victims' families that something is found out. Because if you look at that list, as I was showing earlier, I really showed it because it's almost all of them are all of the causes of death are accidental drowning. And after a while, it seems just too suspicious to be that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only a portion of the victims.
And someone is still out there giving a paralytic and beating some people and throwing them in a lake.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So, so I bring the happiness and the joy.
Courtney, you're amazing. Thank you for coming. And now I feel like I need to watch Baby Reindeer. So thank you for the recommendation as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back and finish it as well. It's really a fascinating show. This is morbid stuff, but we're drawn to it. It's the dark corners.
Yeah, it really is. We're drawn to it. And Mark asks me all the time. Mark does not like true crime, but there are instances where I can get him to sit through a show with me. So
there it is.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Hal. Yeah.
Great to meet you, Courtney, and thank you for the fascinating tales here.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I have to meet your wife. Wow.
Oh,
absolutely. My new best friend.
She has done a lot of true crime, so you guys would have a lot to unpack and talk about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well,
all right.
I look forward to that. Have a great show. And I will see you next week, Ken.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you
so much.
Bye.
And that is True Crime Corner.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, so I have a little bit of news to do before we get to our pre-recorded interview where Mark sits down with our logistics expert, Jonathan Rosenthan. So let's do some news before we get to that. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. There it is. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. That's right. The deadline has passed now for anti-Israel student protesters at Columbia University to break up their encampment or risk suspension. School officials putting student protesters on notice. They face possible suspension for the next school year. President Minu Shaflik says administrators and student organizers have had constructive conversations since last week, but rejected the demands that they have been making to divest from Israel. This is horrible. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but at least 5 people, including a baby, killed as a powerful storm system spawned tornadoes across the central U.S. The 4-month-old, one of 4 people killed by twisters in Oklahoma over the weekend. Cleanup and recovery efforts are underway across the region, with massive destruction reported in some towns, including Sulphur, Oklahoma, and Minden, Iowa. Former President Trump is in, it's a pretty horrible situation. Former President Trump is in New York City ahead of a second week of testimony in his hush money trial that resumes tomorrow. Trump charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in order to hide hush money payments ahead of the 2016 election. Judge Juan Merchan is expected to hold a second hearing Thursday regarding Trump's alleged violations of the gag order. That should be interesting.
Indeed.
An upcoming book by South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, I always say her name wrong, reportedly includes a story about when she had to shoot and kill her 14-month-old puppy. According to The Guardian, Noem calls the dog untrainable and less than worthless, writing the story illustrates how she's willing to do what's necessary, even if it's difficult, messy, and ugly.
Yeah, this is a wild story. It's like the most inhumane. When is it difficult or necessary? Like sometimes you got a dog that's a little goofier than and not as trained as another dog. Like
she said
mind-numbing.
This one attacked some chickens, I would argue, right after she tried to train it to hunt. But yes, so this one attacked some chickens at a neighbor's ranch, and then when she tried to corral it, nipped at her. So she said in response to this article that she posted on X, tough decisions like this happen all the time on a farm. Of course, she's former President Trump's on the short list of vice presidential candidates. So yes. I think they're going to underestimate how many animal lovers there are out there. I don't know.
Like, what wasn't it, Republicans and violence towards animals. Mike Huckabee's son killed a dog once, right? And then didn't Mitt Romney leave a dog, a dog's leash, attached to the car and drove away?
Yes.
Republicans, the anti-ASPCA party.
I guess.
What the heck?
So, man. Well, California is getting its own $1 coin in 2026.
Whoa.
And the state's governor is asking for the public for design ideas. Here you go, Hal. This is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin Newsom soliciting submissions on his X account. He said the coin should honor California's innovations. It's like the city of industry. I don't know. Some of the critics quick to post their ideas, including coins depicting tent cities and homeless encampment fires. The state has spent $24 billion on homelessness, yet the problem continues to swell. So that would be a good coin.
Yeah, maybe you have like a Dust Bowl era, unhoused person. Like there's some classic photography from that, but I don't know if that was quite California. But yeah, the homelessness issue is very sad. What else? A cool bear picture. That'd be fun on a California coin. Maybe the greatest Los Angeles Dodger and either Sandy Koufax or Jackie Robinson. I don't know. That would be. I think that'd be pretty cool. Although there are other baseball teams besides the Dodgers in California.
There are? No. Yes, there are. Of course. I'm sitting here in Giants territory, my friend.
Oh, there you go. So maybe
maybe a Golden Gate Bridge.
Ooh, Golden Gate. Oh, so you could have a few different
Yeah.
California landmarks.
There you go.
Oh,
Oh,
look
there's
at
the
that.
tent city
There's the
one.
tent city.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
Sad reality.
Speaking of Governor Gavin Newsom, he is traveling to the Vatican City to attend a summit on climate change. Pope Francis invited mayors and governors from around the world to be part of this 3-day event. Beginning May 15th, Governor Newsom is scheduled to speak at this summit as well. And here in California, we are having a U.S. senatorial race. Congressman Adam Schiff holding a comfortable lead in the latest survey in the race for the U.S. Senate seat, once held by the late Dianne Feinstein. 61% of likely voters polled by the California Public Policy Institute say they support the San Fernando Valley Democrat over his opponent, Steve Garvey, as you mentioned, the Dodgers. Republican former Dodgers great has 27% support. 92% of Democrats say they'll vote Schiff. 88% of Republicans plan to vote Garvey. So no surprise there, right? I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, this it's a blue state, and sadly, for Dodger Blue, Steve Garvey looks like he will strike out. TBD.
Yeah. Well, here's an election story that's kind of disconcerting. There's a new study that concludes that a large percentage of voters are skeptical about election results. They did a poll of Orange County, California residents. This is done by the UC Irvine, and it found 23% of those surveyed think Joe Biden did not legitimately win the presidential election. That's 23% of people asked in Orange County. It breaks down to 55% of Republicans who thought that President Biden somehow stole the election. 88% of Democrats believe the election was fair. 23% of those polled say they don't know. Researchers say the result is likely similar across the country.
Saying 23% believe there was election fraud.
Which goes to show if you say something enough, you beat it into the minds of people. It doesn't matter whether it's true.
Yeah, it also goes to show that a quarter of your neighbors are dopes. I mean, what the actual F, Kim? I mean, for real.
We have a friend of the show. His name is Jim Avila, and we have a contest every year where we play the drops, and we vote for the best drop. And this year's winner was Jim Avila saying 30 to 35% of people are idiots. So that's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. No, that checks out. Hence we have QAnon and so many different phenomenons that get co-signed by people, and it's sad.
We're talking about those college protests, and Cal Poly Humboldt, formerly Humboldt State University, they're closing down their campus for the rest of the semester because of all this. The announcement being made over the weekend, it comes as pro-Palestinian protesters continue to occupy 2 academic buildings at the university in Arcata. Officials say anyone on campus without authorization of university police could face citations or even arrest. Students living on campus are asked to limit their movement between their residence halls and the dorms. They are not allowed to be on other parts of the campus. All classwork will have to be done remotely. So, I mean, here we come right out of the pandemic, and now we have these students again who, there's something about going away to college and having the college experience. Now they're basically on lockdown again. So,
yeah, wild stuff. You spent that time. You probably have some people who were freshmen in 2020 and maybe stepped away, and now they're back, and it's like, oh, here we go again, having to do the remote learning.
According to the American Lung Association, Sacramento is one of the top 10 most polluted cities in the United States concerning ozone and particle pollution. They have a new report out. It's the 2024 State of the Air report. It assesses air quality nationwide, grading cities and counties based on pollution levels. The Los Angeles Long Beach metro area topped the list for high ozone days. Bakersfield led in year-round and short-term particle pollution. So we're not doing very well in California when it comes to all this.
Yeah, I mean, it's akin to smoking how many cigarettes a day just simply living in Los Angeles.
Gross. Really? Come on now.
Yeah, no bueno.
No.
I quit smoking cigarettes over 10 years ago, but I live in Los Angeles, so it kind of cancels it out.
That's good. I mean, but now you go outside, take a deep breath, because there you go. Suck it all in.
Yep, there you go. Exhaust.
Of course they're doing this. NBC Universal's Peacock streaming service will see a price hike just before the Summer Olympics, right? Come on now.
Yep.
The monthly subscription fee for Peacock Premium will jump $2 to $7.99 starting July 18th for new subscribers. Meanwhile, the price for the mostly ad-free Peacock Premium Plus will go up to $13.99 a month. The new prices will go into effect for existing subscribers in August. Come on. I guess if, you want to make your money off the Olympics, but that's a money grab.
No, and it reminds me of a terrible experience I had with the last Olympics. I wanted to watch one of the I forget if it was hockey or basketball. So I forget if it was the Summer or Winter Olympics, but I wanted to watch one of the gold medal games. I'm like, all right, I had to go to, I forget if it was Peacock or Amazon who was showing it then, but there was a paywall, and I was like, I guess I'm not watching the game that I wanted to watch. Where's just Bob Costas on NBC, like the good old days. They get you coming and going, Kim.
They do. Speaking of wanting to watch things on TV, I think a lot of people might be watching this. Lastly, Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. It's going to be a professional sanctioned fight is the newest on this. It means rather than being an exhibition bout, it will count toward their professional boxing records. So Tyson last won a professional boxing match in February of 2003. The former heavyweight champion and YouTube star set to duke it out July 20th at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, and that fight is going to be streaming live on Netflix. So.
Yeah, Tyson did have an exhibition against former champion Roy Jones Jr., where he still looked pretty good, and he outclassed Roy Jones. But this is, pardon me, sneeze there.
No, because I'm tight.
Thank you. Yeah, as much as I want to see Jake Paul take a fall and and really take his lumps, he's proven to be a decent athlete and outclassing some of these MMA guys he's gone up against. But this will be a real test. I mean, Tyson is 57, but the guy is just one of the most dangerous ring tacticians we've ever seen. So who knows?
Well, this report is sponsored by Coachella'ValleyCoffee.com. I was reading an article, and I know I'm a tea lover, but I was reading this article that says microplastics are pretty prevalent in tea bags. There's researchers at McGill University in Canada found brewing in a single plastic tea bag released about 11.6 billion microplastic and 3.1 billion nanoplastic particles into the water. Now,
yikes.
I know we can't get rid of it, but to limit it seems like a better idea. And I found on Coachella'ValleyCoffee.com, they have these non-plastic tea bags. They're made out of wood pulp, and they don't change the flavor of the tea at all. They're inexpensive. You get a package of 100, and that's what I'm using now. And I'm so glad I found them, especially when I read this article. I'm like, oh, thank God I have the good stuff from Coachella Valley, because that makes me feel a little bit better. So I like the vanilla tea and the ginger mint tea, and I just bought my husband some Ocotillo espresso.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can get your 10% off by typing in Mark T, no spaces at checkout, and get your exclusive 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
That sounds wonderful. It sounds better for you, and it sounds delicious. Yeah. You are selling me on this, Kim. Also, I got my 23andMe done, and turns out I'm 75% microplastics.
Are you? Well, yeah, we can fix that right up. Maybe whittle you down to 50% at least. I don't know.
That'd be a dream. That'd be a dream.
I'm Kim McAllister, along with Hal Rudnick, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I love
love when we have a special guest in, and we do here now. This guy is the CEO of Saybrook Management, one of the preeminent, if not the preeminent, organizations associated with logistics, shipping, how stuff gets from here to there. And I have every manner of question for the great Jonathan Rosenthan. Hello, sir. Nice to see you.
Well, let's hope we don't let down your listeners.
Well, your insecurity is charming, but believe me, it's misplaced. This is right up your alley. I actually thought of talking to you and began to initiate the effort to speak with you when the bridge was downed by that ship that hit that bridge and the bridge collapsed, and it not only we lost those souls working on the bridge, but it affected a major bit of commerce that goes through that harbor. And it made me wonder about something that you've mentioned before, which is the vulnerability of our ports and sort of the inefficiency of our ports and just the world of ports and shipping and trucking and getting stuff from here to there and how we measure up. For a moment, for the news cycle, everyone was focused on that. Now it seems we've kind of moved on, but I wonder if you could just give me a state of the state, how that did affect shipping, and then just give me a broader sense of where this country sits worldwide when it comes to getting stuff from here to there.
Well, those are a whole bunch of questions wrapped into one. You never let me down. You always come up with good, thoughtful questions, Mark. So yeah, we started talking when the ship ran into the bridge, and you called and said, "Hey, what do you know about that?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know about why the ship ran into the bridge. I can make some guesses, but I know a lot about disruption." And that's really what that was, right? It was physical disruption, but it was disruption of a part of the supply chain, which is a network. It was a very small node, that is a bridge. That's one node in a billion node network. And that's what I want you to think about, and I want your listeners to think about. The supply chain, it isn't a supply chain. People call it a supply chain. That sort of emotes a linear path, right? A to B to C. That's not how it works. It's a very complex network. And that network includes lots and lots of nodes. It's a lot like the human body, if you think about that. It's like a nervous system. And the nervous system is all connected. So a trucking company in Columbus, Ohio would be a node on the network, and a warehouse in Dubai would be a node on the network. And how do those interact? Okay, so think about it more like a neural network. In fact, in science, we call it in logistics science, we call it a neuro network, oddly enough. And so what happens when there's a disruption at one or more places on that network? And the truth is, bad things happen, and they happen quickly. And there's a network effect. It doesn't just affect the bridge. It affects the ships coming in. It affects the rail going out. It affects all kinds of things, right? So that we think of that as a neuro network.
But again,
now,
John, just to interrupt for a second, I think the notion that it affects things was clear to everybody looking in. But why isn't this network that you talk about able to compensate for this disruption?
It's a great question. The fact is that the neuro network, the global neuro network, is extremely fragile, And we've been talking about this and lecturing. I've been lecturing on this for years, that we are very fragile in many, many respects, particularly here in the U.S. You ask the question, how do we do in the U.S.? Now, most people would say, well, we're the U.S. We must do really, really well. The fact is, we suck. We generally suck. And there's a bunch of reasons for it. It's not that we're lazy or that we're stupid or any of that stuff. It's a little bit of our system. Let me back up a second.
But let me back up to just that. What does that mean? We suck. We suck at what?
Well,
getting stuff from here to there, at protection. Yeah, go ahead. Please expand on that.
I'll give you some metrics. So the port of Los Angeles, which is it is the largest port in the Western Hemisphere. It accounts for 42% of all imports into the U.S. So very big port. Ports get rated by the World Bank every year. In 2021, they rated 380 global ports all over the world, Zimbabwe, Rotterdam, everybody. Guess who came in on the productivity and efficiency scale? 379 and 380. Long Beach and Los Angeles.
Out of how many?
380.
Out of 380, we're 379 and 380, is what you said?
Correct.
For the bottom two.
We are the bottom two. We are the in Los Angeles and Long Beach. We are the least productive. The World Bank, not me, the World Bank rated us. In fact, I sent you that, Mark. I sent you the article.
Right? I saw it. I just wanted to react as though I hadn't read it.
I sent that to you because when I tell people this, most people think I'm lying.
Yeah. So I was just trying to underscore it for the audience because I was essentially recreating my reaction when I first saw it.
Right. No, listen, that was my reaction. Yeah. So, part of so I really want to focus on disruption today. I really want to focus on what's really happening in the world and why is this?
But Jonathan, please, before you do that, or at the same time that you do that, or along the way, or just make sure that you will at some point address include why we're 379 and 380. Why this lack of productivity at the ports? I mean, that's an extraordinary thing. The Port of Los Angeles, I would certainly think, it uses sophisticated technology, I would think. It uses manpower that works efficiently, whatever. You just presume these things. That again, that's the myth of American exceptionalism, maybe, but I'm just wondering why we're at the bottom.
Well, I think part of it is the way things work in the U.S. I mean, we're a democracy, and so we kind of got to vote on everything, right? And so stuff doesn't happen quite the way it might in China, for example.
Meaning it doesn't happen as quickly. Is that your point?
Yeah, it doesn't happen as quickly. It when China wants to build a port, you don't think they have a referendum, do you? Like they just say we're going to build a port. Then, well, wait a second, I live here. No. You used to live here. Move, and so things are just done differently. I've got a guy that works for us, a great guy who's a 3-star admiral. He runs our aviation division, and he says, the U.S. has a very different culture and a very different way of doing things, and with respect to the information gap. He says, look, you want to blow something up? Call the U.S. Navy. Like, we're the best. We got 11 carrier groups. You want to blow stuff up? We're the best. You want to disinformation? You want to manipulate a population? You want to use information to change the narrative? Call China. Call Russia. We're not very good at that. We're a transparent society. And so this whole notion of disruption and where I'm leading here, I don't mean to be rambling on here, but where I'm leading is that disruption is as mind-numbing as a nuclear bomb. They have something called kinetic warfare. Kinetic warfare is you shoot a missile and you blow something up. That's kinetic warfare. They also have something called subkinetic warfare. What does a bomb do after all? A bomb just disrupts, right? That's what it does. It's intended to disrupt. Subkinetic warfare is the manipulation of information. It is everything that is done before a bomb goes off. So when we start thinking about China, we start thinking about Taiwan and how are they going to respond when we try to block them from taking over Taiwan. They're not going to send a missile and bomb Columbus, Ohio. That's not what they're going to do. We know that they've embedded malware. Mark, that they just reported 2 weeks ago that our cranes at the ports are embedded with malware, that the Chinese manufacture most of them. So what they will do, back to disruption, what they will do is disrupt. And so our information systems become critically important. The data that is produced by these neural networks, the neural network is producing data like, where's my stuff? Where are my trucks? How did they, where's my pallet? Where's my inventory? How are things moving? When is it going to be disrupted? Can we use predictive analytics? Can we use artificial intelligence to predict disruption and mitigate disruption? We've seen back in the pandemic, look at what happened when there was disruption. The pandemic disrupted. We had a spike in inflation. We had huge jobs loss. I think people for the first time realized, oh my God, like the supply chain can really impact in a meaningful way our way of life. I think that was the first time we actually came to that. Prior to that, as you well know, because we've known each other a long time, as a supply chain expert, as a logistician, I was the last guy anybody wanted to talk to at a cocktail party. Like, what do you do? Well, I'm a logistician. Next, like getting girls was tough. They always wanted to talk to you, Mark. But
to be fair, no one wanted to talk to you at a party before you were a logistician. So let's.
That is true. That is true.
I know, yeah. But to the point, you're right about the fact that I think the pandemic made us acutely aware of the supply chain. When I think you could have stopped 10 people on the street and 9 of us probably really wouldn't have been able to tell you what the supply chain really was prior to COVID. So that permeated American the corporate world. So there is no major corporation in the U.S. today where there isn't someone on the board of directors raising their hand and saying to the CEO, "Hey, what's going on with our supply chain? Are we resilient? Can we be disrupted? Are we subject to attack, cyber attack, a ransomware?" You would be negligent if you were a board member not asking that question. So everyone today is now asking, well, okay, how can we become more resilient? How can we be protected? How can we predict in advance disruption within our supply chain? How can we mitigate it or avoid it? And so that's really where I'm spending 100% of my time is on that information technology. Now it blows my mind and may blow yours to some extent. I'll give you an example. You know what a container is, a big metal box, right? That metal box has no connectivity. That metal box is just a metal box. It's not connected to the internet. It has no brain. It doesn't know who it is. It doesn't know where it's going. It doesn't know the temperature or the weight or anything else. All of that is changing. Pallets, chassis, trucks, containers, drones, you name it, anything that moves is going to provide information. That information becomes incredibly valuable, particularly in an artificial intelligence world, where that information, you can actually make sense of it, right? Right? So, because so there is no, in my view, there is no richer environment for data than logistics, because everything that's moving, its information is changing every minute. Right? Prior to this evolution, was there a way to track any of these big metal boxes, as you call them? Was there an air tag type thing in them, or was there?
Not really. They have very primitive 40-year-old technology. They have an RFID tag sometimes. Sometimes they'll have scans on the side where there's an optical reader. But remember, that's very subject to fault, and it's also latent. That means you scan it, so the minute it gets scanned, you might know where it is. You don't really know much about it, but you might know where it is. But then 5 minutes later, it moves, and it doesn't get scanned for another 3 days, so you don't know.
So there's no real-time intelligence, meaning intelligence, I think, is a fine word.
Exactly.
There's no real-time keeping track of this stuff.
Yeah. So we just acquired a company in Rotterdam called Container 42, which is probably the leading platform. It's a company that it's a consortium Intel and IBM and Cisco, and because it is the thought leader in smart containers. So there will be smart containers, smart chassis, smart trucks. That's all happening.
That has to be. I mean, that's going to happen quickly, I would think.
It is happening pretty rapidly, and it helps on all kinds of fronts, like counterfeit goods, like contraband. People always say, they ask me, there's so many containers coming into the U.S. Do they check all those containers? Like, do they look inside? No, that's not how they do it. What they do is they look at who packed them, and they say, well, this was packed by, some great Japanese, Toyota Motor Company. And great. So Toyota, they're not going to have contraband. So we don't need to check that one. Okay, well, you don't need to check that unless between the movement of that container and, getting to the US, somebody got in it and stuffed some junk that you weren't supposed to put in the container, right? So,
sure, absolutely.
Okay. So wouldn't you like to have a device on the container that says, hey, I've been tampered with?
Right.
Okay. Well,
this is extraordinary to me that those things don't exist, because I have to think this technology isn't even that expensive.
It's not that expensive. The technology is not that expensive. And now with our friends at Starlink putting up a mesh net, that was another technological impediment, that, you have satellites, but those satellites have dead spots. You're moving from network to network. You might be going from 5G to 3G to satellite. And so you have these dead spots, and these assets need to, now all of a sudden you've got a mesh net, which is actually a net around the earth that's continuous. So that provides a big opportunity for logisticians to really understand how things move.
Wow. So it sounds as though this is an industry that has been a bit behind the technological
way behind. Listen, the
it's
industry
weird because
is,
it's such a critical industry, as we've just sort of stipulated. I mean, it's so insanely important.
And there's reasons. I've spent a lot of time thinking about why it's so far behind, but we're 100 years behind, or 50 years behind. I mean, it just hasn't. It's beginning to develop, but look, the container was invented in 1956. Okay, that was the first time we had a container. The first container ship wasn't built until 1963. Now that was a really good idea, the container. We reduced our transportation costs by 80% by using a container. Now, what did that do? Well, it allowed us to go to places like Vietnam and China, and because our transportation costs are much lower, we could use that less expensive labor. But our supply chains got very long in order to reach that cheap labor. That was all done because of containerization. There wasn't any other reason to do that. It was the reduction in the transportation. In transportation costs. I got to tell you, credit where credit's due. America's a great place. There was a guy who was an entrepreneur named Malcolm McLean who said, I'm going to invent the container. And he did it.
It's extraordinary because it's so simple in a way. As you say, it's a big metal box,
It's a big metal box, and you put, and you put your stuff in it and you lock it. And we have ways today of managing exactly how that container moves, like things like geozones. We can actually set up, we know where the container is going. And if the container leaves that geozone by 10 feet, we know it's going from the factory to the port. And the minute it strays away from that, what we call a geozone or geofence, the minute it strays, it notifies us. Hey, your container just is outside your geozone. Something's going on. Better look at it, right? So there's so much going on, and it's very, very exciting. People are intimidated by artificial intelligence, and they shouldn't be. I mean, we should certainly be sensitive to it, But in things like logistics, it's going to be amazing.
The vulnerability of our ports, could you speak to that a little bit? You sort of hinted, you made me think of it when you talk about China, you talk about Chinese technology. And, China's an adversary of the U.S., and they certainly would want ways to maybe monitor things going on in the U.S., just as the U.S. would want things monitored in China and Russia, among our adversaries that way. But can you speak to this technology and the technologies at the ports and the vulnerability to an adversary like China?
Well, what we learned recently, and was reported by the New York Times, is that the cranes that lift the boxes have communication devices. Many of these are produced in China, and they were ostensibly produced in China because the steel was much cheaper in China, so they could manufacture these in China, and so everybody bought Chinese cranes. They are by far the dominant crane in U.S. ports. Those cranes have connectivity to the internet, and the information is stored. We think it's stored in China. Now, I'll tell you where I know I have better information, because I'm kind of in the middle of it. Are drones. So, and it's related to the cranes, but the drone, you know what a drone is. A drone flies around. A drone is nothing more than a truck that flies. That's what it is. It happens to be maybe a very small truck, but it carries a load. It carries a payload. That payload is some kind of a sensor. We usually think about it as a camera. You buy the drone, you fly it over your kid's bar mitzvah, you take a bunch of pictures. Well, right? But
right.
After all, that's an optical sensor, right? It just absorbs digitally, it absorbs optics. Well, we have drones that'll absorb infrared. They can absorb LiDAR, but they absorb data. That's what they do. So it might surprise you to learn that there are 900,000 Chinese drones deployed in U.S. airspace. 900,000 today.
And when you say Chinese drones, you mean made in China?
Made in China. Made in China, correct. So the dominant player is a company called DJI. You guys may well use DJI drones. Go buy one at Best Buy. In the industrial market, which is the market where people fly drones to get information, they're not flying the bar mitzvah. That market is also dominated by DJI. That data is absorbed by the drone, and then it is stored on a server in the cloud. So that information, that data, which is very granular, and it's geospatial. So it's not just a photograph. It is a very granular representation of whatever it is. Might be a power plant, could be a highway, could be a power line, a gas pipeline. It's very granular data, and you know right where that is, right? So you could map that power line within inches. And that information is stored in China on DJI servers.
Now, the last part of that is perhaps the most provocative and disturbing. We only have a few minutes left, but when you talk about something that was built in China, a technology that was built in China and that a lot of consumers in this country and others are using, businesses as well as just regular consumers, that's kind of become something we're used to. We're used to everything being made in China, we buy it. But when you talk about the data being stored on servers there, then it makes me wonder, how does that get past government watchdogs or whatever regulatory arms of the government are associated with this? And also, does that necessarily mean that that data is being aggregated in some way that it could be weaponized against the U.S.? I guess the answer to the last question would be, well, of course, if it's in the Chinese servers, then that belongs to China.
Yeah. So we know for sure. Look, I didn't make this up. I mean, there is a congressional subcommittee on China. There's a Senate committee on China. Mark Warner is the chairman. They're actually doing a pretty good job of trying to understand this. The truth is, when it's all said and done, and I've talked to the experts, and we've testified and given advice to the congressional committee, the truth is we were asleep at the switch. But for sure,
should there have been a regulatory body that this got passed, or in other words, does this fall under the realm of some regulatory body? Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
And it got into the outfield on them.
We just didn't understand it. We
Okay.
didn't understand the power of information. We didn't understand what they were doing. Now, what is clear is that data is being stored on servers in China, and there is legislation. I think you can Google it. It's if you put in anti-drone legislation, there was an act last year. There's an act coming up this year. There was a very good report by the committee that was written on Chinese influence generally. So that's occurring. That data does exist on Chinese drones. When the Chinese, when DJI and the Chinese government are approached about it, they swear that they don't look at any of that data. And I don't know about you, but I believe them. But the interesting thing is that when you put together this fabric, right? It's not just one thing. It's important to understand the power of information. And when you put together things like the drone data and the crane data, and the fact that we know that China wants Taiwan, at some point, the experts say at some point they're going to do something with Taiwan. They're not going to fight us. They're not going to fight our aircraft carriers. They're going to shut down the power grid in the Western U.S. That's the kind of thing they will do, in my view. So again, getting back to sort of the broader question, put China aside. It's a very interesting area, something we should be paying attention to. But our focus is really understanding in a very deep way the information that is generated off of assets that move. When you understand how assets move and what kind of data is produced by those assets and what you can extrapolate based, about the economy, about the climate, about disruption, about congestion. Why is the Southern California so congested? Why are the freeways packed with? Well, it's because we don't understand the data, and we can use that data to make our world a better place. I'm very optimistic. I hope this doesn't come across as being
just the opposite. I think it comes across with that optimism. In fact, I would kind of wrap up by asking you, so a lot of these issues related to congestion, congestion in the skies, congestion on freeways in California and beyond, you think that many of these things could be addressed and life could be improved, and of course in the world of logistics, with AI and with more data to then feed into the AI?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We're sort of a weird culture in that, and maybe it's just human beings. We focus for some reason on devices, right? So how are we going to clean up the air? We're going to make our cars better, make them electric, make them non-polluting. Great, that's all great. So we've done a good job in the trucking world of focusing on propulsion. We completely ignored information and the power of data. So we shouldn't ignore propulsion. We've made great strides on propulsion, but the changes become incremental, right? They get harder as the changes get better and better. What we should also be doing is saying, why in the world are our terminals closed all night? That's when we should have the trucks on the road when there's no traffic. Why in the world are we moving all of our goods 60 miles to the Inland Empire? Why shouldn't we be doing things with them closer in where we don't have to drive 60 miles? I mean, keep in mind, these are big numbers because we have 50,000 gate moves in Los Angeles every day. There are 50,000 containers moving. So that adds up,
And the reason that they might concentrate on areas like the Inland Empire or 60 miles east of Los Angeles is because of money, right? I assume that's what it has to do.
Well, it's partly money. It's partly, the union influence, right? The closer you get to the port, you've got some union issues. I mean, that's another big, you asked me a question, why are the ports so inefficient? Particularly in California, I think that I think a lot of this lies at the doorstep of our politicians. The unions in California, this is not rocket science. The unions in California have an enormous influence over elected officials, and
they want to maintain a status quo. You're saying?
They want to maintain.
They want to employ their.
They want to employ their people at pretty high wages, and that's okay. I mean
that's their job. Right?
That's their job. Right? Yeah. But they do have. I would say that the unions in California have a disproportionate influence, and it's fine to make money, and everybody needs to make a good living and all of that stuff, but not at the expense of inefficiency. Inefficiency is bad. I have studied inefficiency for 40 years, and I cannot find anything that is good about inefficiency. And on the flip side, efficiency is almost always good.
Sure. No, I mean it's even if they're reluctant participants at some point, the union is going to have to give up some ground, and I think they are, but they may have to do it more expeditiously.
And there are ways to do that. We try to get them to learn about the technology because they certainly have a great workforce, very, very dedicated workforce. I've had, I had a wonderful conversation at dinner with Jimmy Hoffa, the son, not the father, about this issue. And, these are very smart people. I mean, we know the Teamsters well, for example. They're
sure. I mean, that's your world. I would think you'd have to.
Yeah, and they're good guys, and and women.
They want to see that. I would think they want to see that port rating go up also. I mean, 379 and 380 is, not something you want to put on the resume. Hey, Jonathan Rosenthal, I love our time together. It's already up. Please come back and visit again. Much to talk about. I'd like to talk world economics with you. I mean, your background, really spans so much of this stuff and these are issues that are contemporary issues facing all of us. So really appreciate you being here, my friend.
Well, it's a great and bold world, and I encourage the young folks out there not to be afraid of it. Be excited because it's fantastic. I mean, what's happening is really exciting.
Really, really cool. Jonathan Rosenthal, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Marco.
Yeah.
Smash it with your iron rod.
I'd come from regular stock.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Hey, we're back. And that was such an interesting interview. It's so cool because I don't think about these things usually.
Absolutely.
You don't think about the way products move around. It just kind of happens and they magically appear where they need to appear. And Ms. M agrees, saying she wants to thank us for superior programming and that Mark's interview with Mr. Rosenthal was fascinating and informative. So there you go.
And it was a great reminder, like just to jump on what you were saying, Kim, the verbiage about the supply chain, I thought it was really insightful, noting that pre-pandemic we never really talked about that. It was such it's like, oh yeah, like you said, it magically appears, but now we're all supply chain experts. It's like, well, COVID had gummed up the works here, and trucks aren't going, and and then the ships and coming out to China because of the pandemic and blah blah blah. Yeah, we're all armchair experts now.
Well, and it seems like some of those things that he's talking about are so easy to fix, at least the way he's talking about it. So, God, I hope we can raise our rankings and start doing things a little better.
Absolutely. And so many things nowadays, it did put a little bit of fear in me when I think about, what disruptions will have this, this effect on or reverberations throughout the disruptions, being able to embed the products we use with malware. It's, oh my goodness.
It's really scary. Some
I'm gonna go back to bed and get under the cover.
He always, every time Jonathan Rosenthal comes on the show, he's so amazing because he always brings up these things that you just haven't even considered, right? Like things that are just like, whoo, and then all of a sudden he says it and you're like, oh my God, how is this even happening? How are we letting the drones come and take all of our information? Like, what are we doing? Anyway.
Absolutely.
How about a little bit of stories from the sky before we wrap up the show? Let's do that.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
Here we go again, Hal. Another plane diverted because of mechanical trouble. This one left Sacramento and then was diverted to SFO. So they didn't get very far. Happened on Sunday morning, a United spokesperson saying it was a possible mechanical issue. The flight was scheduled for an 8:45 a.m. departure from Sacramento, headed toward Denver, had 164 passengers, landed safely at SFO, and then they had to bring another plane in to take everyone there. They didn't declare an emergency, and they didn't say exactly what happened this time. No specific issues mentioned, but it's the second United flight involving SFO to be diverted in the last month. We had one of them, a toilet reportedly overflowed into the cabin. I don't know if you remember recently at SFO, a plane taking off lost a wheel of its landing gear and the wheel came down in the employee parking lot.
Oh,
so,
boy.
I mean, we're not doing very well. But yeah,
I hope it didn't hit anyone out there having a smoke break.
I guess no, it didn't, but could have. Here's an interesting story. This is about airline refunds, and they're now required to refund passengers for canceled and delayed flights. So the new rules were announced last week on Wednesday by Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And what he said was there are new rules now that automatically will give cash refunds to passengers for canceled and significantly delayed flights. And airlines can no longer decide how long the delay is before they think, okay, now you're due a refund, right? Now it's set. The rules are set.
Well,
so
that's good because it just seems like we're at the mercy of
totally at the mercy.
Of sometimes the gate person, their whim, or the airline. Maybe the gate person is just the bearer of bad news. But the traveler seems so powerless in the face of just extreme, life-changing, plane information.
Horribly frustrating. And usually, they'll give you what, $25 in free airplane food, I mean, for like being delayed for 3 hours, whatever. It's ridiculous. So here's the new rules. The delay is covered would be more than 3 hours for domestic flights and more than 6 hours for international flights. Then you're due an automatic cash refund. It includes tickets purchased directly from airlines, from travel agents, also from third-party sites like Expedia and Travelocity. And remember, we used to be, if you booked from those sites, you're SOL, right? That's it.
Right.
You don't get in line for the refund. But the Department of Transportation rules say passengers will be entitled to a full refund if their flight is canceled or significantly delayed, and they do not accept alternative transportation or travel credits offered. Then they must be offered an automatic cash refund. So.
Good work, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Always been a fan of that fella, and too bad he is not running for president right now because he's about 40 years younger than either of our candidates.
And so smart, smart.
Yeah.
How about a happy story? We'll wrap it up with happiness and joy. Unless you want your pilot in the pilot seat, in which case maybe this isn't so joyful.
Okay.
No, there's always a number two, right? The pilot's the co-pilot. He can handle things up there.
Yeah, if the pilot has to go take a number two,
right, then
put
that's
the controls
fine.
in the hands of the number two.
So this pilot proposed to a flight attendant in front of all the passengers on the plane. Is a Polish pilot, and he had his flight attendant, now fiance, but then girlfriend. They were going from Warsaw to Krakow, and the airlines, Polish Airlines, posted this on their Facebook page, showing the moment that Captain Konrad Hunk clutched a bunch of flowers and popped the question. He said he came over the flight speaker and said, "On today's flight, there is a very special person, and I hope that she does not expect anything. Ladies and gentlemen, about 1.5 years ago on this job, I met the most wonderful person that completely changed my life. You are most precious to me. You are my greatest dream come true. This is why I have to ask you a favor, honey. Will you marry me?" Aww. And then
Very
she goes,
sweet.
running down the aisle of the plane to hug her future husband, and there's romance and there's flowers, champagne for everyone. No, I don't know if they poured the champagne, but everyone was offering congratulations. What a feel-good flight. Yeah.
The story took a sad turn when they were both fired for breaking the company fraternization policy.
No. God, that would have sucked.
But here's the actual rest of the story. The customers, the passengers all gave them privacy as the happy couple joined the Mile High Club.
This is how I know you're a writer. That you have to you redo the story, make up your own cool ending.
Yes, I'm pitching you various endings here.
Oh, but yeah, that's a sweet flight. It's nice.
No, that's a nice story and very memorable. I definitely, if I was on that plane, I'm following my wife and child to the Midwest to see some relatives and in-laws tomorrow night. But if that happened on my flight, I'd have my camera out and I'd be taking all these pictures and posting it. That's joyful.
Are you good on airplanes? Are you scared to fly, or is it like no big deal for you?
No big deal. Okay. And I'm very good at, I'm a good packer, and I'm good at getting to the airport.
Oh, okay.
Knock on wood.
Nice.
Don't want to jinx myself, but I've got a good streak going. How about yourself?
Well, I used to fly doing traffic, so I'm not afraid to fly. Even in little airplanes, I'm okay with everything. I am not good at getting to the airport. I am notoriously late for everything. So yeah, that's always a trouble spot. So I have to make sure that I fly with someone incredibly responsible.
Oh, see, that's my wife, and she has helped change me for the better. I've in the past I have missed one or two flights, but that's over 10 years ago, and I'm a changed man.
Look at you. I'm so proud. That is Stories from the Sky.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
Now, did you make sure the plane you're flying on is not a Boeing 777 MAX 9?
Now, I'm going to ask about the nuts and bolts as soon as I
make sure that you don't sit next to the door plug. You want to make sure you're stay clipped in the whole time.
Indeed. Yeah. I don't want to go flying.
Hold your cell phone in the hand away from the window, right?
Exactly.
Just in case. Oh man.
Goodness.
Huge thank you to everyone helping support the show, and that includes Luis with $1.99, a huge soda of a YouTube show. Thank you, and thank you, Luis, for the contribution. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. It is themarkthompsonshow.com. That's where the Patreon and the PayPal links live, and that's a great way to help make sure this show stays on YouTube and podcast, and we can all continue doing what we love to do. All right. Hal Rudnick, I get you one more time tomorrow. I'm so excited. Woohoo!
Good times. Kim, thank you as always for being an excellent co-pilot.
Absolutely.
And taking the reins. Thank you, Tony, and thank you to your lovely, generous audience. Good times.
Very good times. Again, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Hal. We'll see you tomorrow. We have David K. Johnston on the show tomorrow. Bye, Tony. And it's going to be a really good show. You're going to love him. He's great.
And thanks to our guests today. It was great meeting Courtney.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
On time. Bye-bye.